Hey nerds, Sage is here. It's time for another Talking Points video. I know a lot of you are just like, oh god, no. Not one of these again. Yes, one of these again. And today we're going to be talking about a reply to the Colorless Hell video I did a little while ago. And how I felt that, like, you know, putting certain points of, you know, interest into Dagger and staff units wasn't exactly the best example of how to balance that pool out. People got all upset, said I was talking about how I didn't want units in the game anymore, was kind of confused by that, but oh well, you know, just pointing out the obvious things there. Still, nonetheless, a lot of you were like, what do you mean Dagger units are, like, you know, are not good, or what do you mean staff units aren't very good? We'll talk about staff units later. Today, we are talking about Dagger units, and how they function in the game, and how power creep may not be helping them right now. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of a interesting factoid. And before that, let me just say, if you happen to have a Dagger unit, like, say, I get a lot of people who are like, I made a Felicia, she does really good at killing mages. That's great, do that, that's fine, works real well. If you can make her work, that's great. But that's kind of the thing that's going on right now, is that a lot of them have a niche role that typically, outside of what they can do, there isn't much else. So I'm just pointing that out. But still, if it works for you, by God, use it. So, do you want to know what the least populated unit typings are? Well, I guess we can give you a little bit of that to go along with it. At the least populated are our Dragonstone units. Well, they typically, there's only 5 of them right now. 2 of them are behind a wall, and of course there's little Faye here.
You smell good.
She's adorable in some ways and kind of weird in others, but still, as you can see, there are only 3 of them below 4 stars, and, well, 4 stars and below, and, well, just above that are actually Dagger units. Yeah, that's right, Dagger units come in at 8, and 2 of them are kind of special. Jafar is only available at 5 stars, and Frederick is not available right now, because he was a specialty unit. So yes, there you guys go. That gives you an idea of what's going on. But a lot of you asked, well, why do you see Dagger units as weak? Well, I guess the best example would be to show you Jacob here, who has a silver weapon, and typically silver weapons tend to have a little bit more might than some of the more generic weapons that are available with the plus, outside of legendary, of course, and we can talk about legendary in a second. And of course, as you can see here, that might is quite a bit low. That is 10 might for a silver weapon, but in exchange, this is kind of something that always happens with Dagger units, is that they are supposed to be these massively powerful debuffers. They are meant to be these people who will throw poisoned weapons at their targets. These weapons will then debuff the target, and the rest of the team can take advantage of it. But the problem here is that, well, I guess it's kind of like the way seal weapons or seal abilities kind of work, because essentially this is kind of what they are. A lot of them have the whole debuffs that are essentially a specialty seal ability, where once they attack, the ability will then take effect and, well, it'll debuff the enemy. The problem is, though, is that this requires attacking. And a lot of the time, that would mean going up against, say, a mage who will counter in full, or an archer, or even a unit that happens to have distant counter on them, thus meaning, well, damage mostly dealt to our little Dagger unit here, who may not be able to take it, which is kind of a disadvantage and not something that's great. Especially now, when the more prevalent abilities that pop up here nowadays are, well, threatens and ploys, which are long-ranged, or at least somewhat moderately ranged, passive abilities that will do the exact same thing without requiring attacking, or, you know, requiring any sort of counter ability that might do damage to you. That's kind of why seal abilities typically aren't seen as very viable these days, because, well, doing so will result in damage, either to you, or, you know, you might just outright kill the enemy, who knows? Thus rendering it kind of hopeless. But this also doesn't help the fact that a lot of the ninjas, or, goddammit, ninjas, I keep saying it, Dagger units in the game right now typically don't have very high attack power. To give you an example here, Jacob here requires an attack boon to actually get 32 attack. which is kind of upsetting in a way. This trend tends to continue on. Even Jafar, who actually has a legendary dagger weapon, he only actually... In fact, let's see what the IVs on this one are right now. Oh, he's a neutral attack, which means that at maximum level, he only has 26 attack. Yeah, that's a bit of a disadvantage, and that's a problem. Granted, his speed is pretty cool, and he does have access to life and death, but still, that doesn't mean too much for our good friend Jafar here when Deathly Daggers, which are supposed to be a legendary weapon, only, I believe, have 11 might. Granted, it's cool, it has a lot of special effects, it does do the whole defense resistance thing that Silver do, and also deals an additional 7 damage afterwards, but again, that really doesn't matter too much because that damage doesn't kill the target, and typically if you're going for the kill, which almost all the units are, well, you're not going to be using this for obvious reasons. The debuffs don't matter, and you do, of course, have the whole problem of being countered, especially when you're Jafar, who doesn't have the best defenses in the world, especially resistance. Granted, you know, it's really up to you on how you use it. That kind of brings about the problem here, is that a lot of these units that come from, you know, all sorts of different backings that have certain abilities, and, you know, a lot of them have resistances or, you know, defenses. That means that they can use things like bonfire and trigger those effectively. That's where a lot of the ninjas or, god damn it, dagger units come in and, you know, are essentially the little niche targets that they are. They're meant to do, you know, kill a archer or kill a mage effectively. But outside of that, they really can't do too much because typically their stats are not very good. And the only unit that I can remember, and this is the unit that I have not used in ages, this was back... I have hardly used Kagura since Skill Inheritance actually came out. That gives you an idea of how much things have changed. Now, I'm not sure if you guys remember, but Kagura, when she came out, she was known for being a powerhouse because a lot of the time, at least most of the units that were seen in the game at the time, were infantry, and her weapon had barely any might on it, but here's the thing, it had bonus damage against infantry units, which meant, well, if she attacked them, she would be doing what would basically be a archer attacking a, say, you know, flyer unit. Essentially, tons of bonus damage, and it also helped that here is the biggest unit right now. This is Kagura. I don't mean that because of, well, you know, balance. Anyways, still, out of everything, Kagura actually, from my remembering, actually has the best attack out of any of the ninjas right now. Typically, she has, well, about 35 neutral, and then also 38 if you happen to have, well, IVs in that. This is actually a attack plus Kagura right here. And even then, I still don't use her, because, well, times have changed a lot more, and her niche role of killing infantry units are not really that great when you have, you know, cavalier teams running around, when you have armored units, when you have flyer units, when you have bike. These are all problems for her. She can't deal with them. She can't deal with a lot of them, and that's just terrifying. And it really kills a lot of the rolls. So, you know, even though her ability with this weapon, you know, can kill tons of infantry units, nowadays it doesn't really matter too much. And most of the time you won't really be seeing her. I mean, you might see her in Tempest Trials or something, but occasionally in Arena, I don't think so. She's kind of lost her muster and her might in a lot of that way, which is kind of sad, because she was such an interesting unit when she came out, and that was something cool to get when you got Kagura, which, you know, oh well, guess that's how it goes. But that kind of brings you, you know, to the problem there, is that, one, a lot of the ninja units, god damn it, I do it again, dagger units, a lot of the dagger units don't really have the might to pull it off. They don't have the strength or the attack to actually do so. And more often than not, they're mostly meant to be debuffers in a, well, game where they're their kind of debuff ability is not something sought after. That's essentially what that is. So how can you fix that? Well, the first thing you can really do is add a, Dagger unit that actually has a semblance of an attack stat that would be more than Kagura here. At least something better. Or add in a different weapon that would be, substantially better than what we have here. Or, we could do the one thing that I'm always dreading, which is just to go the Jenny route, where you add in an ability that would say, instead of having a debuff, the ability then converts that, debuff into essentially more attack or more might, making your, your Dagger unit more of an actual attacker than opposed to whatever they tend to be. And I always hate that kind of method, because that means that, just like Jenny here, it may end up being locked behind a 5-star wall, meaning that you will not be able to easily access them, which is something that terrifies me. I personally would like to see just ninjas with different, god damn it, Dagger units with different, different abilities and different, concepts that would just alter how they fundamentally work, because obviously right now, they don't fundamentally work the way that they're supposed to. At least their method of how they work is not something that people favorite, or at least prioritize. Because seal abilities are not great when you can have units that just stand there and have the ability happen naturally due to their passives. It just kind of erases the purpose. And that's not something that's really that great. And that's pretty much why Dagger units are kind of falling behind when it comes to that. Well, their weapons lack the might, they lack the attack stats, and there's really no method for them to actually gain that ground that they're lacking when it comes to, say, an archer or even, a tome unit. Generally, people will want to go with, the tome unit or the archer because, well, it's a guaranteed kill, and typically people want to just kill in one turn. Or, if they happen to have the ability, 2 turns with the dancer. Who knows? And that's just the basic gist of it, guys. Right now, well, I don't know how it's going to happen. I would like to see more Dagger units in the game, because, well, I like a lot of the characters that come from it. I mean, I like Kagura, I like Jafar, I like Jacob, even though he's kind of weird, and I like all of them, It's just a shame right now that they're all stuck in their own little spots, I was about to say niche again, where they just really can't make up that ground. And it's an unfortunate thing that we have going on. And, if you don't like it, well, that's just how it goes. It's just something that we're going to have to, look at and see what happens in the future. I have a strange feeling that eventually we're going to end up with a ninja Jenny. Dagger unit Jenny that basically, that basically has an ability that just forgoes the debuff and adds more damage. Because, well, that's just something I have a terrible fear of happening. But, if you guys have any opinions, feel free to state in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like as well. I love you guys very much, and I will see you all very soon. So catch y'all later.